as most of you probably know, I am a big believer in hybridization and integration. Russian Sistema at its core was created post-1917 by the communist government at the exact same time that both sport and combat sambo were created. And all three arts were created as hybrids in response largely to a Japanese threat from the Russo-Japanese War, using the Japanese model of judo and various other Asiatic martial arts very heavily, and integrating many of their own traditional Slavic folk systems in the mix. The premise was that they would have something that was scientifically tested, and so the language of science played a huge role not only in the Soviet consciousness but also in the cultivation of Sistema. To that end, I often say that evolution is a continuing process and not a destination. It is not logical to me to say that June 17th, 1958, Sistema achieved perfection, and let us all emulate that in perpetuity. We need to be constantly growing, constantly evolving, and that means constantly integrating. And there is a common principle, also taught in judo, of structure breaking that is broken down into three tiers. And I'm going to be alluding to it here because I've honestly seen no better description, and I think we are disservicing ourselves if we try to reinvent something that's already quite solid. The Japanese have a notion that when achieving structure breaks, we should look first to break the balance of the subject. And this is often referred to as Kuzushi. The breaking of balance is the exact same period wherein we test our grips. As my very first instructor said, we test our grips first to make sure they're solid for us. We grab something, we want to make sure we have a good grip, good footing, and a good line of pull. But we test the grip to test its effect. If I pull and the other person stands like a wall, then Kuzushi has not been achieved. So if I see that that's not working, then maybe I'll get more base in, or I start to work in different angles. And only when I see an affectation do I go for the second phase, Secours. And Secours is often translated or perceived as fitting in. But not even getting into that yet, if I look at just something as simple as Kuzushi, breaking the person's balance, seeing where they're at, then I want to be very cautious about fitting in ways that put me in an imbalanced state. I want to get them teetering on, in this case, let's say on their left foot, and then when I come inside, I want to make sure that I'm arriving solidly. And I was always taught, stand like a samurai, be solid, or you want to be very, very solid. Traditional Japanese work, oftentimes we would use the wooden geta, the sandals, or sometimes even iron or lead versions, so that when we'd step, we'd have perfect balance all the time, and there'd be the equivalent of using a weight vest in judo as well. So, very simple drill. You can simply put a strap around a tree or around a column. If you have two straps or a sleeve on a gi, you can use that as well. So the first thing we look at is how we can break their balance without breaking mine. So I want to be cautious about this, where I'm breaking my own before they're affected. I want to break always from the hips. Taking a step from the foot, you'll see a lot of this in judo or in fancier arts, versus stepping from the hip. Dropping the tailbone, turning, always in good alignment. So the hip is the source of the motion. Likewise, if I break balance and at the same time seek to go in, then I have a very good arrival, good penetration where I'm solid. There's a nice cement column, so I can go in with certainty and see that my structure is good. That basic action can be enough to knock somebody down if I'm pulling. And then conversely, I can also look at leashing, not horizontally, belts are flying off, but lifting on angles, right? So what's the best way for me to pull up on that 45? Will it still be in this grip, or does it become easier at a higher angle? And so I'm screwing my arms, just like we would in our Cossack arm screws, screwing to get that imbalance, to lift. Lifting 45 up, I'll use the strap because he's leaving me 45 up, and then 45 down. So a very simple exercise, but it's one that's going to put a lot of certainty and power in your grip strength, a lot of certainty and speed into your hip movement. Very explosive hips are the key to everything. And if you can enter with power, not misalignment, but power, then I can easily conceal hits in those motions and make everything much more fluid. Every acquisition of every grip can blend into a hit. Remember, Kuzushi should be the testing of grip. Not only my strength inherent in my body, but its effect, its communication to the subject. Pulling on cloth, grabbing wrists, and hitting overlap as I pull and I hit, and then when I have that moment of imbalance, I see if I can fit myself in. Tsukuri, fitting myself in without losing my balance, and then finally keke, the completion or the execution of the technique.